I'm going to Libya to work for a non-profit organisation clearing landmines and unexploded ordnance.
So what does that actually mean? What will you be doing?
I'll be supervising a small team. There'll be me. I'll have four clearance operators, a driver and a medic. And my task will be on old ammunition supply points. So Gaddafi had large stockpiles of conventional weapons, and during the uprising, NATO bombed them, which has flicked out explosive ordnance bombs, rockets, missiles, grenades, etc., all over the place. And me and my team, we're going to start clearing up some of these areas and disposing of the stuff.
And for some of these rockets, landmines, they're still active. They could potentially still go bang.
Yeah, I mean, if they're fused and armed, or potentially when they got bombed, that can make them less stable. So, yeah, they're unstable by nature.
You scared?
Um, Not kind of shaking scared, but it's always good to have sort of an amount of fear. It keeps you in check. If you're truly fearless, then you're more likely to do something daft and get yourself killed.
How do you prepare to go to somewhere like Libya and do this sort of job?
Well, I mean, in my first gig in Iraq, I had to get used to sort of the prospect of indiscriminate violence and come to terms with my own death. So when I came back to the UK, I wrote my will, made other preparations for death, got rid of a lot of my stuff, and I guess spent a lot of time thinking about you do sort of naturally sort of your own mortality, and pretty much came to terms with it. So not that I want to die, but I've kind of accepted that that is something that could potentially happen with this line of work, but I am sort of sufficiently motivated and driven to do it that that's a risk I'm prepared to take.
You mentioned Iraq there.
Yeah.
This isn't the first time that you've been to somewhere like Libya to do something like this, is it?
My first contract was 12 months in Iraq. I was working just north of Basra in a place called Kurna. So I was there for 12 months doing large battle area clearance operations in the old marshes, predominantly stuff left over from the Iran-Iraq conflict.
And was that the first time that you'd ever been to that part of the world before?
Yeah, that was the first time I'd been to the Middle East or spent any significant time in an Arab country. I'd sort of been on holiday to Morocco for a few days, but that was my first real taste of living in an Arab country.
How was it?
People were amazingly welcoming. I wasn't really sure how I would be perceived as a Brit, obviously coming in after the recent war. But I was really impressed. Most people greeted us sort of very welcomingly, sort of offered us food, gave us tea. Few notable exceptions where people would sort of turn up with weapons and maybe shoot at us, but on the whole, very warm welcomes.
Did you ever get shot at?
A couple of times, not necessarily always aimed at us, but more sometimes warning shots in our sort of general direction and vicinity. But when that starts happening, you don't really want to find out where the next ones are going to go.
It sounds like something that is straight out of the Hurt Locker film.
Yeah, a lot of people ask me sort of, so you do what they do in the Hurt Locker. I'm not working on IEDs, which is what the Hurt Locker centres around. And then also, it's a lot less gung-ho and sort of action man than that. If you do sort of act in that way, you're much more likely to get yourself killed. So really, it shouldn't be that exciting by any stretch of the imagination. If you follow sort of procedures and SOPs and do everything sort of by the book how you're supposed to, and generally sort of don't play with stuff that you're not sure what it is, then it's actually relatively safe.
So what's an average day like for someone that explodes bombs for a living?
Normally getting up fairly early, probably with the sun or just before, because in a lot of the countries we work in, it gets really, really hot. And then sort of by midday, A, it's uncomfortable to work in, and then B, sometimes the things that you're picking up are actually physically too hot to handle. So start early, mobilise your teams. That might be, sort of in my case in Libya, it would just be one team, but sometimes in Iraq I had sort of 8, 9. Get your teams, get them to where you're working, supervise them. I'm not actually paid to swing a detector and dig holes because it's not cost effective to employ Brits and Canadians, etc., to do that kind of work. And also it creates local work for the local population in areas that are contaminated, where they might otherwise be interacting with the ordnance in a much more dangerous way. So I'll be supervising them, and then when they find things, I'll sort of come see what they found and then decide whether it's safe to move, not safe to move, if I need to make it safe or dispose of it. So doing that in the day for maybe up to 8 hours. Then after that, reporting, meetings, maybe try and get a bit of Skype with friends and family back home if possible, and then sort of try and cram sort of 4 to 6 hours of sleep in at the end.
Tell me about the sorts of people you're working with whilst you're out there, because you are considerably younger than a lot of the people you're working with, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm the age of lots of the guys that I work with. I'm sort of the age of their children.
What made you want to get into this career path?
I was a civilian engineer at Rolls-Royce, completed my apprenticeship. The recession and the general sort of state of manufacturing in the UK on the whole made it sort of seem that there wasn't going to be much of a career choice in engineering, in manufacturing engineering at least, in the UK. So I started thinking, well, if I'm going to do something else, what might I want to do? I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew that the job that I was going to have, I would like it to be practical. I'd like to have social value and sort of be something that made a real difference.
So helping people?
Yeah, to help people. And also if I could do that overseas, that would be great.
Lots of people say they want to help people, they want to make the world a better place.
Mm-hmm.
What makes you willing to put your life at risk to do it?
It's tragic, really. About a third of the world's countries have got contamination with landmines and explosive ordnance. Each year it's estimated some sort of 15 to 20,000 people die or are wounded because of landmines. About 750,000 people die as a result of armed conflict and violence each year. And although lots of money is put into it, it's not enough, and lots of people die from preventable causes. I mean, you can clear landmines, it's just they're still there and they're killing people, and often children. About 30 to 40% of the casualties are children, long after the conflict, and it's affecting the most often the poorest and the deprived communities in the countrysides, areas that are otherwise sort of ignored and therefore are still contaminated with these weapons, and they can't continue with like a normal standard of living. So when I was in Southeast Asia, I sort of saw firsthand the impact that landmine and cluster munition contamination had on some of these communities, and that was quite a powerful experience, and made me kind of think actually that would be something that is worth doing, and I would like to be part of that.
I'm sure your friends and family are proud, but this must be your mum's worst nightmare.
She's been very supportive, but obviously she would rather that I wasn't going to places where I'm kind of endangering my safety. She's not said, yeah, great, I really want you to go to Iraq, I really want you to go to Libya, but she's never tried to hold me back. She's never said don't do it. She understands where I'm coming from, why I want to do it, and she says that yes, it does need to be done. So she's been very supportive of me in that respect, and without her support it would have been much harder for me to do it. I've got my satellite phone and various other things, so I can give her a tinkle sort of every week or so to touch base.
What will your living conditions be like whilst you're out there?
Not 100% sure in Libya. In Iraq we were living in converted shipping containers.
What's the converted shipping container?
Okay, if you picture a large container ship sort of carrying freight between continents, the big metal boxes, 40-foot long, sort of those, but partitioned up and kind of rigged out inside with kind of beds and stuff, and a door and a window cutting them. They're actually pretty plush.
Surely that gets quite hot in the Iraqi sun though.
It does when your generators don't work and you don't have air conditioning. Yeah, that wasn't my best experience. But in general, no, that was pretty cool. In Libya, I think, I'm not sure, we might be in tents, but I think we're probably going to be in a house in the city of Zintan. So
at the moment your address is Arnold, Nottingham, and
yep.
As of next week your address will be Zintan, Libya.
Yeah, that's about right. I'm quite excited really. I mean, it's always interesting moving to a new place, new challenges, meet new people, sort of immerse yourself in a new culture, get to sort of dust off my Arabic and give that a go again, hopefully improve some. And yeah, it's just nice to get about.
Is it a career path you'd recommend?
It's disgraceful really that it's a career path that exists at all. There are definite reasons to do it. The feeling of satisfaction you can get when you kind of are able to make sort of these kinds of impacts and reduce the threat to the local populaces is immense, but it has to be a serious decision. It's not really something that you kind of just make on a whim. It's going to be a job for life. There's not many of those anymore, but this is one of them. Best estimate put it at sort of between 80 and 110 million landmines still in the ground, and I think last year clearance was about 400,000. So at that rate, it's going to take a long time, and that would be assuming that people weren't still emplacing landmines. There is an international, it's called the Ottawa Convention, to ban landmine usage.
This is the one that Princess Diana was quite involved in, isn't it?
Well, she was kind of involved in raising awareness of the landmines and sort of the plight of the people affected by these devices. So there's the international campaign to ban landmines, and 159 countries have signed the convention to say that they're going to destroy their stockpiles, they're not going to put them down anymore, and they're going to remove ones that they have put down. Unfortunately, some of the big players in the market haven't. So United States, China, Russia, India, Pakistan, Israel, I think Libya might have now, but they hadn't, all haven't signed this. So they're free to produce, stockpile, sell, use landmines. And until everybody said, all right, we're not going to use them, it's just going to kind of continue and continue. Because you can put them down in a couple of minutes, but it can take years to get rid of them.